Welcome to Pure Intuitive Talk with me, Trish Smith. I'm a multi-dimensional channeler sharing my gift to assist others to connect and work with their whole being, helping bring them into a beautiful way of high-frequency living. Immerse yourself in an hour of nourishment that feeds your spiritual journey and invites you to embrace your empowered soul. You'll feel armed with new understandings for how to shift from pain to love as we explore topics from shamanic sound healing to gut health. Are you ready to take accountability for the impact that we have on the world around us and learn new tools and techniques to feel whole again? Of course you are, and you're in the right place. Pure Intuitive Talk starts now. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Trish Smith, your host of Pure Intuitive Talk. And I really do appreciate you being here, taking the time to tune in and listen. If you're here tuning in, it means that you're looking for something, right? You're looking for some insight, for some answers, maybe even just to feel like you're not the only one in the world going through something. So just know that I hope today I'm able to offer some of that for you, but congratulate yourself in the first place for bringing yourself to different podcasts, to listening to other people's opinions and insights. But also at the end of the day, know that you want to go back and return to within and sort through information that you've gathered and ditch what doesn't resonate with you, hang on to what does, and maybe implement tools that you've learned. And if those, again, don't work for you, ditch them, right? But if they do, then maybe you can grab some tools, techniques, practices that help you function better in your own daily life. So again, I'm going to hopefully hand some insights off to you. I'm talking today about being healed, right? Or healing and what that means. Also discussing generational trauma. It's something that comes up a lot now in spiritual teachings. And I just kind of wanted to go over some of the things that I've seen, I've heard, and what I know for myself from within. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you'll know that I channel divine wisdom. And so I go to source for my answers. And some of the information that comes to me, I've used in my own life, and it's been working. So I'm grateful for the downloads that I get. And I also enjoy passing them along just in case somebody else is able to pick them up and use them. So in recent, I'd say years, we're hearing the words generational trauma more and more. And I've witnessed, and I'm sure you guys have too, different spiritual teachers talking about being healed, right? There's a lot of people on social media right now talking about how they're healed and they've healed. And I always wonder when I hear people talking about how they healed this and they're healed now. For me personally, listening to it, it makes me go, oh, okay. So you haven't quite considered that there's other things, right, that are still there ruminating maybe, or there's still ways that are affecting the way you look at the world, because that sometimes comes from our ego, right? Not coming from our soul when we're talking about, I'm healed, right? And I'm sure my ego as well could say in some areas, oh yeah, I healed that. But if I really look deeper and I look under it, it's like, well, a lot of those experiences, including traumatic events, have shaped me, and they are the underlying reason for the way that I handle different things in my life. So for myself, I like the term healing. I believe that we're all healing. And a lot of us, unfortunately, are healing while we are still, quote unquote, right, surviving other traumatic events. So if you're one of those, I hear you, I feel you, stick with it. My family has suffered greatly over the last decade. Mental illness struck our family, and it's been a lot, and it's been heavy, and there's been times where it's been very dark. And so for me, working through my own self-development, right? Working through my own old traumas, and while navigating new psychological trauma, while navigating new traumatic events, it can be daunting at times. And so I'd just like to offer, if you're someone like me who has considered yourself on a healing journey for a long time, mine spans over a couple of decades, I'd say definitely a few decades. And you're still doing the work, you're still trying, even while you're trying to, go through the things that are still happening. Know that you're not alone. I think, unfortunately, in our society and in social media in particular, a lot of people don't talk about it, and they're not willing to admit, because it is hard and it is heavy. And for myself personally, even hosting a podcast, I want to protect the privacy of my loved ones. And so I don't talk about a lot of the things that I experience for that reason. And I would assume there's many others in my shoes, having the same practice, right? Of not talking about certain things to protect someone's privacy, however they weigh on us. And they're very heavy to carry. So that being said, when it comes to healed and healing, I just wanted to kind of give you permission to feel like you don't have to strive to get to this place where you would consider yourself healed. When you hear people talking about how I'm healed, and now that I'm healed, likely these people are speaking from their ego, and there are other areas that they have not looked at. And so if you're thinking, oh, this person has healed, what's wrong with me? Why am I not healed? I'm trying, I'm doing the things, and I still feel like I'm healing, but I don't consider myself healed. Just in my opinion, know that that's quite possibly because healed isn't a state. And I truly do believe that, because of my mediumship, even when we pass, right, we still have things that we're working out. And I've talked with spirits, people that have passed over to the other side of the veil, and they still have work that they're doing, and they still have things, right, like we do here in our flesh suits. And so healing is an ongoing journey, one that doesn't have a timeline. Be gentle with yourself. Give yourself permission to be real, right? To be gentle with yourself. You don't have a deadline, right? And know that you're certainly not the only one. If we knew, right? If we knew what other people were going through, it might help. Sometimes I feel like it's kind of a shame that people aren't as oddly transparent as I am. So, because I think it's helpful, right? I can walk into a room and say, like, not doing great today, but a lot of people, either they've been programmed or they're not comfortable enough to do that. And then sometimes if we are having a hard time and other people are not willing to admit that they're not, it makes us feel like we're the only one. So just know that most likely the people that you're surrounding yourself with, or when you're out in public, they're definitely struggling with their own things too. So I want to lead into the general generational piece, right? So I believe I'm allowed to share some of this information. I know there are legalities when it comes to talking about people's experiences, right? But as my ancestors that have passed on had some pretty gnarly stories, right? And those stories are now shareable because they're deceased. But when it comes to generational trauma, when it comes to the times that we're in, where people are cutting each other off very quickly, especially for some reason, loved ones, close to what loved ones, and looking at the epidemic of estranged parents and adult children, right? Generational trauma. I'm going to kind of start this out, and I'll probably have to continue after our break. But a story for you. My grandfather, my grandpa, he was my mother's stepfather, right? He came from a family with severe abuse. His mother used to make him have sex with her. Okay. He was sexually abused. He was physically abused. He was psychologically abused, verbally abused. Okay. My grandma, my mother's mother, came from a long line of more abuse, more sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, a lot of trauma. And so my mom was raised in a home by her mom and her stepdad from people that had come from very severe trauma. My grandpa suffered from schizophrenia. I don't know if it was triggered by the abuse he suffered. I don't know. But I do know that he suffered greatly from the schizophrenia, right? So my mom was raised in a home where she suffered physical abuse. She suffered verbal abuse, psychological abuse, right? However, I like to be able to give credit where credit is due. And my grandparents did not, they made sure that they protected, especially my grandpa, my mother, from that sexual trauma, right? And he did not pass along that pain, although he passed along other pain to her, right? Fast forward, my parents raising myself and my siblings, my mom did not physically abuse me. My mom did, she protected me from sexual abuse, mostly. There were some instances where I was molested as a child, but had gone to my mom and she made sure that I wasn't around those people anymore. And so I just want to be able to remind people when they believe that they are curing and healing generational trauma for decades and generations. I just feel like I could most likely promise you that your mothers, fathers, their mothers, fathers have too broken chains. They have also protected their children from the severe abuse that they suffered. And then while raising their own children, made their own mistakes and quite possibly were abusive in some ways, right? But I have to say, when you start here and you keep breaking chains, right? Eventually you get to a place where hopefully your family can live more healthy lives. I do have to go to a break now, so I'll continue that. I hope that the story is helping you kinds of relate and see where those generational traumas have been, being worked on and being healed. But things take time. Things genuinely take time, things like that. So I'm going to go to a break, and when we get back, I will continue talking about generational trauma and giving credit where credit is due, and give you some tools and some ways that you can help yourself when you're struggling with the ways that you were raised, right? So again, my name is Trish Smith. You're tuned into Pure Intuitive Talk, and I will talk to you when the break gets done. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Trish Smith, your host of Pure Intuitive Talk. And before we went to the break, I was talking about generational trauma. I was giving you a little insight into my generational trauma. And so for myself, the relationship I have with my mother has been estranged for the last almost decade. Now, my mother is somebody who grew up with abuse, right? And so her actions, her behavior, although I understand where they come from, don't feel good, right? They've been traumatic for me. But I am capable, and I hope that everybody is, of looking at where she came from. I guess for another way to say it, which is what my grandma always used to tell me about people. Well, Trish, look where they came from. And it pointed to why, right? Why is somebody the way that they are? And my husband often has told me, like, I'm really good at making excuses for people. And I am to a degree, but at the same time, I love understanding. Understanding means a lot to me. And so I feel like I'm able to gain understanding and look into reasons why. So I consider them reasons why someone is the way they are and not necessarily excusing the behavior. So my mother, coming from the abuse that she did, I look at her as a woman who suffered, right? And hasn't taken the time to do her own inner work, right? So maybe that's offering more grace than people typically offer. But I don't hold it against her because I know her story. And I guess right now, witnessing so many people cut off their parents, like the adult children right now. And I can absolutely appreciate when you've suffered abuse. I have a young woman that I've worked with who had to cut off her mother, and it was very much necessary. And it came with a hard conversation. This person has great courage and had real conversations with their parent and chose to genuinely, I'm talking CPS involved, the whole 9 yards, protect their children from the mother. Okay. But if you're not in a situation where you're being abused, it's really something, right? Adding to the timeline ahead of us to know someone's story, right? If you have a loved one and they're struggling, and maybe when you're around them, they're not super positive, maybe they're heavy and you're considering that negativity, maybe by you offering them grace, by sitting down and having a conversation and maybe learning where they're coming from, why they are the way that they are. Oh, like that one, I saw this quote years ago, and it said something about, like, if you knew the reason behind the behavior, you wouldn't be angry. In fact, it would make you cry. And I believe that's very true. I believe especially older generations, people have suffered great trauma that they don't talk about. So that's something that has been a good change of events, that we're now talking more openly about things that we've been through, but older generations did not. They did not have that permission. And so if you know their story, can you offer compassion for them, right? Can you not necessarily excuse the behavior, but can you appreciate the behavior, right? Is this person, maybe they're your parent, did they suffer a lot of trauma growing up that they haven't talked about? Can you give them that grace, right? Because if you're raising small children, and I see this a lot on social media, I don't want my kids around her, she was so narcissistic, and now everybody's narcissistic, right? Because we're just plastering labels all over everybody, without understanding. What are you teaching those children, right? So if you're cutting ties with your parents, you're modeling that for your children, because kids do what we do. They don't do what we say. And so what you're modeling then is severing ties with a parent without having hard conversations, right? And I understand that there are people out there that have gone through the hard conversations and they've been abused, and that's, a place where they have to be, and that's so unfortunate for them. But the people that are cutting off ties with others, whether or not they're parents or other loved ones or even friends, without having those conversations, it's a disservice to yourself, them, and the children that you're bringing up. So I guess sometimes I want to ask these young parents that are so quick to push their parents back, push loved ones, siblings even back, is what are you teaching your own children, right? When you're having hardship with another person, that you just walk away instead of working through or loving someone through hard times. Myself, I've been married 25 years come October, and my husband and I have both been through very hard things. And I've loved him through his, when we were in our early 20s, he had a lot of anger issues. And he loved me through depression and panic attacks, PTSD. And there's so much value in that, right? And getting to have the person who comes through that storm, right? So if we walk away from each other during the storm, we miss out on the person that they became from the storm. And if we're teaching that to our children will not learn what it looks like to love people through hardships. And in turn, I don't know that they'll know how to love themselves through hardships, right? So that's something that I wanted to offer as a tool, as a practice, because everything's a practice, right? If we are spending our time in our intrusive thoughts, right, that's a practice. If we are spending time doing breathing techniques, that's practice. So whatever we're devoting our time to, whatever we're spending our time doing is considered a practice. So I'd like to offer you this. I'd like to offer you practicing not abandoning yourself, right? Practicing sitting with God, practicing sitting in the silence, listening from within, right? So from the beginning of time, the call has been to go straight to God, to listen, right? It's written in books like the Bible. It's written in other books throughout history. Even now, spiritual leaders will, explain, go straight to God, right? So how does one do that? Maybe is where people are lacking the knowledge, maybe, right? So if we're going to go straight to God, that is in the stillness. That's the stillness within, right? So you can still be in a room full of chaos and noise, and you can listen from within. You can connect to the feeling inside, right? So what does that feel like? It feels like being at home, right? The most warm, comfortable, soothing place that feels like that warm hug, right? So imagine you're holding a new baby, right? Or a new kitten or a new puppy. That feeling, that divine, pure feeling when you're just holding that infant and nothing else matters besides that moment, that warmth, right? So that's what divine energy feels like. That's what communing with the divine feels like. Even in the times when you're praying and it feels like there's a ton of bricks sitting on your chest and you don't feel like you can connect to the divine. Going back home, right? Going back to center. So if you are somebody whose child has cut you off, or if you are somebody whose loved one has cut you off, right? And you're living in a place of fear and feeling rejected and abandoned, it's very, very, very important to shift your own energy and go into the place where you're no longer rejecting yourself, no longer abandoning yourself, right? Living from that place with the pain, with the struggle, because it will shift. And if you're somebody who is going through the world at this time, believing that it's necessary to cut everybody off, go back to that place and ask yourself if you are abandoning yourself, if you are consumed by fear and you believe that you're protecting your peace by using boundaries, right? That are actually walls, because there's a difference between placing boundaries, right, and building walls. And in my opinion, in the last recent couple of years or so, a few years, building walls is being taught as, creating boundaries. So be careful. Be careful to who you're listening to. Be careful to what your influences are. If you want generations that come after us to be connected and love and support each other, then be very careful with your own actions right now, right? So if someone's upsetting you and you're even considering getting rid of them, offing them out of your life, what does that look like for them? What does that look like for you? What does that look like for generations to come, right? And know that we walk by example, right? We walk through this world setting an example and having an impact on everybody and everything around us. What do you want your impact to be, right? Are you so afraid of love, right? And you're rejecting love by putting up walls and calling them boundaries, that you're creating a colder world, and is that what you want? So just asking ourselves some of these questions, just know that anytime you need support, that it's important to reach out and find it. But the best support comes from listening within, right? If I can be of service to you, I'm here by appointment. I do Zoom. I'm also in person. But if you're looking to work with somebody, I'm happy to work with you, help you understand a little bit better where we can discern between where somebody actually really needs to be cut out of your life and where it's time to have some hard conversations, and I can actually help you through that too. Anyways, it's time for me to go. I've enjoyed being here with you. There's so much more obviously on this topic, and I'll save some of that for another day. I just wanted us to pay attention to what we're leaving behind for generations to come. And I pray that it's love, understanding, unity, compassion, grace. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Trish Smith, your host of Pure Intuitive Talk. You can find me at pureintuitivecoach.com. Thank you for listening to Pure Intuitive Talk with me, Trish Smith, your Pure Intuitive Guide. Come back and join us for encouragement to take responsibility and to connect to your whole being. Remember that every moment is the right moment to choose peace, acceptance, and forgiveness. We all have the courage to look deep within, get real with ourselves, and make upgrades to our ways of interacting with the world. It's been my privilege to share this hour with you. For more information about me, go to pureintuitiveguide.com. That's pureintuitiveguide.com. Thanks again, and we will see you here next time on Transformation Talk Radio.